best fucking episode of the series so far. Jesus Christ, what a great episode. Even the smallest, littlest doubt that I had that this wasn't anime of the season, that this wasn't my anime of the season, it's gone. This is easily the best show this season. And I can't say that enough. I feel like I've said that every single review I've done, because each episode has just topped the episode previous. Hello everybody, I am PhenomSage, and welcome back to another Houseki no Kuni, Land of the Lustrous episode review. Today we are going to be talking about episode 3, Metamorphose. And yes, I see what you did there. Last episode left our main character Phos in a bit of a pickle. He kinda died, or at least from what it appeared. He was eaten by a giant snail. The material that the snail put out seemed to melt all of the gems' bodies, so going in to rescue him is out of the question. And so this episode focuses on the aftermath of that situation, trying to figure out how to return Phos, who is seemingly a snail right now, back into their gem-like self. And the first thing I need to mention about this episode, probably the thing that stood out to me and made this episode as enjoyable as it was, is the animation and the direction. If you've watched my previous reviews, you know I've praised this series on its direction and its animation because they're both fantastic, but this episode just pushed it to another level. There were scenes where my jaw dropped because it was so damn good. Seriously, I do not want to hear that this is anything but just a masterclass production in CG, and even disregarding CG, just the way scenes are directed is so well done. Whether it be Daya and Bort facing up against the snail, the camera twisting and turning as they run along its back, or a scene of Cinnabar using his mercury zooming past the grass onto an unsuspecting foe, or Daya running in the moonlight, trying to get back to the school as fast as possible to save Phos' life. It is all so incredible. This is some of the best animation I've seen this season. This is some of the best animation I've seen all year, and I seriously have to praise the team. This is just absolutely fantastic. Another thing that stood out to me in this episode that I haven't given this show nearly enough credit for is its soundtrack. It is always a good thing when I notice the track in the background and I say, wow, this fits the scene so well right now. Just beautifully arranged pieces that convey the tone of the characters and the scene, and I just cannot wait for this full soundtrack to be released. I know it's probably gonna be a while, but I cannot wait to hear some of these tracks alone, just because they're that good. With the mind-blowing technical aspects out of the way, I just had to mention that first, and just before anything else. Let's get into the actual content of the episode and what happened. I learned two basic things from this episode. One, Daya is easily best gem. And two, the people at the school really don't like Phos at all. Once the battle with the snail concluded, and Phos is seemingly turned into the snail itself, Daya does everything he can to find a way to turn Phos back to normal. He goes to every single gym and asks, can we help him? Is there any way to turn Phos back to normal? And almost every single gym either does not give a shit, or says, actually, Phos as a snail is kind of better because now we don't have to hear him yelling all the time. And you get a much deeper understanding of Phos' relationship with the rest of the school. At first, I thought it was kind of just a silly banter thing, like, oh, you're so annoying, don't worry about it, whatever. But no, people in the school genuinely seem like they don't like Phos, to the point where they don't care if Phos gets turned back to normal. And honestly, if you think about that, that's pretty fucked up. Disregarding trying to save Phos though, there's a lot of fun and entertaining character interaction in this episode. I seriously cannot overstate how fun it is to watch all of these characters just talk to each other. They all have very distinct personalities without being overly tropey. And of course the voice talent is excellent, so it adds to that even further. With nowhere else to turn, Daya actually brings Phos out to the beach and even contemplates himself whether or not it would be better to turn Phos back to normal. And you can kind of see his point of view. Phos is just the butt of every joke. He annoys everyone to the point where they don't even want to save him. And not being a gym would mean that he would never have to compare himself to anybody else there ever again. But there is the small little issue that he is a fucking snail, so that's a little bit flawed thinking, Daya. Later that night, while Cinnabar is on his patrol, he actually spots Daya in a ridiculously over-animated sequence for what ended up actually happening, although I'm not complaining, it was fantastic. And this is where we get a lot of the Cinnabar focus of this episode, focusing on his development and how he feels about Phos. And it's not an exaggeration to say that Cinnabar goes full tsundere here. He sends a lot of mixed messages about how he doesn't want Phos here at all, how he hates useless members of the group who still impose themselves on the others, and how they would be better off without him. But at the same time, tells Daya where Phos actually is and how to save him. As it turns out, the snail that was responding and pretending to be Phos all this time is actually just a random snail, and Phos is the gym trapped in the snail shell back at the school. I guess you can thank Cinnabar's knowledge of the wildlife around the surrounding area to thank for that. Daya runs off back to the school to save Phos, but I love the line that Cinnabar gives before cutting away. Daya says if they chip away the gems from the shell, they can save Phos. At first, Cinnabar yells. He says there's no use saving a useless person like that. But after Daya has already run away, he says, but I guess I'll give you some more time before I call you a liar. And at first that line confused me, but to me what that indicates is that he wants Daya to save Phos. He's saying that Daya's not lying when he says that he can save Phos. So I don't know, I really enjoyed that line. I like the Cinnabar focus that we got in this episode. Although, it seems like Amazon is making the same mistakes I was last episode. I'm not trying to call anyone out, but look at this picture. Notice anything peculiar here? It could very well be that they're trying to use gender-neutral pronouns for the most part, but in the rare cases that they don't, they want to refer to them as females. But I don't know, it looked like an error to me. It could not be. Who knows? This whole ordeal is so confusing, I'm just gonna call them he's. Daya makes it back to the school, Bort is at the front, and I love this little interaction between the two, where Bort doesn't say anything, he knows what's up. Daya says, I know how to save Phos, and Bort just says, go, do it. I was afraid that Bort would yell at Daya for being out so late, so I'm glad that they had this little interaction here, and we see that Bort has a heart. And the little montage or scene that follows where all of the gems are teaming up together to bring the shell out and get the gem fragments of Phos to reform and save him. I'm not even gonna lie, it made me a little bit emotional. I was tearing up a bit. I don't even know why. For some reason, I just get really emotional seeing people team together to save an underdog. And it is nice that, even though it was probably all Daya who convinced all of them to team up, that they were still willing to save Phos. At the very end of the episode, Phos is saved, he is reformed, pretty much good as new. He's the exact same as we remember him from the past episodes. He basically gets up and starts yelling immediately, so that's how you know he's okay. But he's yelling at the snail because obviously the snail is the one that ate him and created this whole situation in the first place. And everyone's so confused because Phos talking to the snail sounds like he's actually having a full conversation with it, like talking back and forth. And Daya says, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? And the end of the episode, Phos says, oh, you can't understand it? And this is a very interesting development and turn for Phos as a character. This is exactly what he needed. Now he has an ability that none of the other gems have. I don't know if this will add to the encyclopedia that he's making or if it has some other use that will come into play later, but there's no doubt about it. This is very useful to this group of gems. Now I'm wondering how far does it go? Can he just straight up talk to any animal? That's what I would assume. It's going to be really interesting to see where they take Phos next and what they do with this ability, but I am super looking forward to it. Like I said, this was just a fantastic episode. The series is still just so damn good, and if you're not watching it yet, I highly recommend watching it. Although I don't know why you're watching this video if you haven't watched it yet. That's been all for me for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned tomorrow for my Ancient Magus' Bride review. I heard that episode was actually pretty good, so I'm looking forward to that. I'll cover that tomorrow. And then later this Wednesday, the next Metamorphose chapter review. Should be fun. I appreciate the support, the comments, talking with me on these videos. It's always so much fun. Thank you guys. And as always, have a good day.